So, on one fine day, as I was doing some kind of file organization for a video project, I was reflecting on a conversation I had with an online friend from about a month ago. That online friend shares many interests with me, and we would go about for hours and hours deeply discussing those interests. It was the joyful chatter we usually have until we reached a point of the conversation where we opened up our trials and tribulations in full detail. We talked about the struggles we faced in trying to navigate the environment around us and contemplated about the directions in which we wanted our lives to take. I remember our main talking point was regarding that how we felt constrained by society and that we're not able to reach the full potential that most people wanted us to be. And we felt constrained by the ideals of people around us. The longer this conversation panned out, the more I found out that me and this online friend shared much more in common than I initially thought. And as we navigated this journey of self-discovery together, it soon dawned upon us that we are, as the kids say, built differently. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today. I know the topic may seem daunting to some people. It might also seem foreign. Come with me as I travel with all of you into the mind of the ADHD individual and how it affects individuals on all levels of education. Not only just kindergarten, not only primary school, but across all levels of education. Yes, even up until master's and PhD levels. Maybe beyond education, into the workforce as well. Needless to say, it affects life on all levels. So let's take a look at the ADHD mind. Let's pretend our minds are like browsers. In a standard neurotypical mind, it's like having one or maybe several tabs open at one time, and they perform tasks in an orderly fashion, one at a time. Similarly, the neurotypical person performs thoughts and actions in an orderly fashion. After one thought is performed, they proceed on to the next task. And after one thought is performed, they proceed on to the next thought. However, the ADHD brain, or neurodivergent in general, is like having multiple browsers open at one time, like about 50 tabs open. And this must be really exhausting for the computer if they were in this situation as well, to the RAM and the processors as well, to the point of a system shutdown. And it's very exhausting not only to a computer having 50 tabs open, but also to the ADHD brain as well. It's similar to that. The slow rate of development in the prefrontal cortex also affects cognitive abilities such as executive functioning and motor skills, and this could lead to many complications that we will see later in this talk. In 2014, a study conducted by the Attention Deficit Association showed that 3.9% of Malaysian individuals are formally diagnosed with ADHD. This number, as you can tell, is very outdated as this data was last conducted from 7-8 years ago, and this number gets even more outdated when considering the number of people, especially females, who may be undiagnosed due to the lack of resources, awareness, and financial stability. ADHD, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, can be really difficult in daily situations, but especially at school, where living with any sort of neuroses can be challenging and unforgiving. While I have not received an official diagnosis as of now, the countless traumas, difficulties, and mental distress all throughout life was the product of not recognizing the severity of my own neuroses when I was younger. And I may concerningly possess a lot of the traits of someone with ADHD, undiagnosed, both in terms of how I behave and how I go about doing my daily tasks. To this day, it's still affecting my life. Lack of awareness was probably the reason why, since my own mother brushed off my childhood ADHD as a one-line joke about my own hyperactivity and would bring out a story every so often about the time that I was so uncontrollable that I would push down a life-size playhouse. Yes, it was quite big and I pushed it down. I was quite the feisty one, so to speak. So let's start there. One common misconception is that only the loud, hyperactive kids have ADHD. That may be true in some cases, but actually there are two main types of ADHD, the aforementioned hyperactive type and the inattentive type, which is according to the National Institute of Mental Health. And as the ADHD brain develops differently from neurotypical people, certain cognitive functions develop at different rates. The inattentive type will have problems writing out tasks and paying attention to what other people are telling them, and they might seem to zone out every so often. While the hyperactive type is more lively and runs around a lot and often interrupts in conversation, sometimes even talking too fast. The symptoms present in children can seem more black and white on the surface, but in modern society, those symptoms can be reprimanded as rowdy, rude behavior. I'm sure all of you were once scolded by your parents when you run around too fast or even interrupt them as a sign of talking back. It does happen to everyone, but as a child with ADHD brain grows older and older, the quirky signs of the not being able to sit still disorder just get more and more daunting. You may have seen that one kid in school, whether it's a primary or a secondary school, who is a gifted student. They always perform excellently in academics and are proficient in extracurricular activities and so many sports and all that stuff in school. But they never seem to live up to their full potential. Maybe they seem to not be able to pull themselves together. Teachers may be frustrated with them because they don't pay much attention in class, either fidgeting with their pen or shaking their legs in class or even doodling in class. Assignments are either turned in past the due date or not at all sometimes. Oh, but they're ever so bright. How do these traits even correlate to one another, you may ask? These is one of the many stories of the ADHD students in school. Some students are creative and bright but seem ditzy and forgetful. Other students may not even be fortunate enough to be called smart in their lives and are constantly troubled by the rising responsibilities of schoolwork. Aforementioned struggles I've mentioned earlier seems to not be in favor of increasing responsibilities, and this is where ADHD behavior seems to be more exacerbated. No longer ADHD is just running around a lot or pushing down playhouses and other extreme sports, but is battling with even more complex symptoms such as executive dysfunction and time blindness. A lot of people tend to associate executive dysfunction with laziness, which is another misconception of ADHD. To clear the fog a little, let's pretend that the two as such. Let's say you're doing a mundane task such as drying the laundry, which is something that I am tasked to do every single day in my household. Laziness is thinking that you'd rather be sitting down than doing the laundry. Executive dysfunction, on the other hand, is wanting to get up to do the laundry and needing to get up to do the laundry, and your brain knows this as well, but you're just not be able to get up to do it. You're just sitting still and not being able to get up. Your body enters a state of paralysis while your brain starts yelling at you to do the task like a drill sergeant. Go do your laundry. Go do it now. Why are you sitting here? Now, this is one of the things that ADHD people face, but there is a whole other can of worms to open in regards to not only executive dysfunction, but also time blindness, which is a lack of ability to tell the time or be able to tell how long a task is supposed to be done, the lack of circadian rhythm, which causes a lack of sleep, and so many more. And all of this equates to the traits of a failing student in the eyes of the educator. The curriculum of the local education system rewards timeliness and well-mannered behaviors. And the ADHD student might not be able to follow through with all of that, whether it's doodling in class or fidgeting with things to seem not focused or interrupting the teacher. And this may seem as bad student behavior. Even if it's not explicitly stated verbally, they might have written about it in report cards sometimes. And this sort of segregation between the ADHD individual with their neurotypical peers may result in a lot of unresolved trauma and bottled anxieties. And being undiagnosed for ages will lead to even more complex issues once you enter university and even into the workforce, because of piling assignments and tasks, due dates they're either forgotten or chased after, and so much more. And it can be an increasing difficult environment to be under. Looming failures, dysfunctionality, increasing stress and emotional dysregulation. How can someone deal with all of this? So I was there lamenting with my online friend about the woes of life that I have mentioned thus far and how all of this has led me to be the dysfunctional adult I am today. And my life is a complete mess compared to my peers who seem to have everything under control. And as if I never expected it, my friend gave me a lot of emotional advice and support. And it felt like I was missing that for most of my life, sometimes due to being misunderstood as weird or bizarre. My friend resonated with these statements, and it felt like we shared a moment of solidarity together. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could put a name to what I've been going through all of my life. And what really hit home for me was what they said to me after I broke down crying over my long-term struggles. They said this to me: "I don't understand why people can't be more considerate." And that is the balancing point of today's conversation: to listen and be considerate. What I've talked about so far is the perspective of ADHD of someone who may have it, but for the neurotypicals who have friends, family members, or students with ADHD, it would be helpful to be more considerate. Remember the images of the browsers I showed you from earlier? As ADHD individuals have a lot in their mind at all times, they can be seen as creative individuals, and generating thoughts at rapid speeds led them to be innovative and have many different ideas and thoughts that can be shared to the world. And that's why a lot of ADHD individuals pursue tasks or jobs in the creative sector and industries. And this can also be reflected into education as well. Rigid syllabuses can be understimulating for the ADHD mind, especially for the inattentive type, due to lack of dopamine production in the nervous system. To excite the dopamine receptors, stimulants such as subtitles in videos, music, and moving visuals can actually excite the brain. I know that I tend to learn better when I watch an animated video over reading text from a book. And of course, when the student stims in class, such as fidgeting with their pen or doodling, it may seem like a method for them to focus in class. And stimming for them is to regulate emotions and to regulate stimulus in class. So rather than seeing fidgeting or doodling as a lack of ability to focus, it can be seen as an ability to focus and for them to actually engage themselves in class. Till this day, I still stim a lot in my daily life as well as during work too, whether it's shaking my leg a lot or playing with the little objects on my desk. When it comes to ADHD in relationships of any sort, friendship, families, and romantic, etc., understanding their love languages really helps, especially in terms of communication. Sometimes what they can do can come off as unempathetic or even selfish to the other party. But that's because most ADHD people relate to other people's struggles by sharing their own experiences as a form of solidarity, as a way to relate to their problems. They are in no way trying to reduce the problems of one sharing them, but it is out of providing solace to the person by letting them know that they are not alone in this journey. I once had a long-term friendship broken because of that issue. Like, my friend had struggles and I shared my personal experiences to her, and she lashed out to me saying that I'm selfish and rude, and that hurt my feelings a lot. And for the longest time I tried masking this behavior because it might make people further misunderstand me. However, as soon as I found out that this is one of the love languages of an ADHD individual, I couldn't have felt more relieved. So don't ever assume the worst out of someone who shares their experiences as a way of providing advice. Maybe within those experiences you can find the advice hidden within. There is so much more I can share to you in regards to this topic and how I cope with it, such as the broken art forms of info dumping your interest to someone, hyperfixations on certain subjects, or body doubling to efficiently get work done. There's a lot to talk about ADHD, but in a nutshell, ADHD is hard, whether to someone who is diagnosed or undiagnosed and displays many of his symptoms. It's really hard, but they're still human. Human like you, me, and everybody else. Humans who can achieve many wonderful things. And humans who do great things despite their imperfections. Living with all these cognitive dysfunctions affects their lifestyle of many with the ADHD mind. But rather than living in resentment, embracing it as part of who you are is healthier for the mindset. I urge all of you to start listening to stories of people with ADHD, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, and how they go about their life and how their mind works. It may open your mind, and maybe you can learn how to start being compassionate to them. having ADHD does not negate the many capabilities of an individual. There are still many points that I don't know about myself. There's still so much I need to learn about myself. But maybe I'm not weird, like everyone around me has told me. But I'm built differently, yet the same as everybody else.